how when you learn a language from a textbook or an app, you can end up sounding a bit like, well, a robot. Think about it. In English, how many of us go up to each other and say, "Good afternoon. What is your name? That is a nice car." We shorten it and we use slang words. Hey, I'm Liz. Cool car. We also drop off letters and sounds, sometimes even whole words. I'm Liz. That's awesome. Or we kind of smush words together. I don't know. Let me check. We even use a bunch of words that don't really mean anything but get dropped in anyway. I was like, well, it's the same in Portuguese. If you've been having a hard time understanding other people, or if you want to really learn the way that native speakers speak to each other, then this is the video for you. I'm going to be breaking down lots of slang words, filler words, and the most common contractions that you are going to hear so that you can sound much more like a local and have a much easier time understanding other people. If you are new to the channel, seja bem-vindo. My name is Liz and I am a Brit living a life that I love in Lisbon. This channel is dedicated to teaching you practical Portuguese in plain English. So if that's what you've been looking for, hit subscribe now so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. So let's dive in. First of all, let's tackle slang words. And if you've been paying attention to my Instagram recently, you'll maybe recognize some of them that I've been teaching you there. So let's start with words that mean cool. So you could say that something is top, fixe, or giro. Now, there's actually an added meaning to giro because it can also mean that a person is not just cool, but attractive. So I could say, ele é muito giro. He is really hot. But what if I wanted to go beyond that and say that something was very cool? Well, I can add the words super or mega in front of these words. So for example, ele é super giro. Another one that you may have heard on this channel before to mean very is bué. So you could say, é bué fixe. It's really cool. And if you've seen my video on Angolan Portuguese, you know that it kind of comes from there. Another one to mean very, to exaggerate the way that you are feeling, is the word tótil. So this one is very common in the north. It wasn't one that I had heard before, but you could say, for example, é tótil fixe. Maybe it comes from like the word total or totally, I don't know. Another cute one that I wanted to add in here was, you've heard me say beijinhos, right? Kind of meaning goodbye. This is what the Portuguese will use when they're leaving somebody. Well, another way of saying that is beijocas. So this is a cute little change of the word beijinhos, and it's a really nice one to include with your friends as well. If you need help with the pronunciation, don't worry, that is normal. Head to the description where I have a free download that will help you get started. So what about dropping off letters or sounds? Well, the Portuguese do this a lot, and if you want to know why, I have a whole video on that over here. Essentially, this is because the English and Portuguese are both stress-timed languages. So this means that we don't stress every syllable in the sentence. We only stress at regular intervals, and the ones that aren't stressed can sometimes disappear completely. So one of the most common places where this will happen with words in Portuguese is when they begin with es, okay? So people won't say estou to mean I am, they will say tô. They won't say está bem to mean it's fine, they will say tá bem. This is where so many of my students get confused because they think that they're saying também, which means also, but they're not. They're saying a shortened version of está bem, tá bem. Another one you might hear a lot when, at the end of a sentence, when somebody's asking, do you see, do you get it? They might say, estás a ver, but it will get completely shortened to estás a ver. So like I said, smushing words together and making one word when there should actually be several is super common in Portuguese. So hopefully by now you're realizing if you're having a hard time understanding people, it's not your fault. So let's take a look at some examples of these. My favorite one is bora. This is actually the phrase vamos embora, meaning let's go, that gets shortened to vambora or even just bora. So I could say, bora pra praia. Shall we go to the beach? Let's go to the beach. You may have noticed as well that para, was also completely shortened there to become pra. Another good one uses an ES word, espera. Wait there, espera aí becomes peraí. Or now which means isn't it, which you can use to ask isn't it, or when you're at the end of a sentence and you're like, is that right? Now becomes ne. Once you start looking out for this, you are going to see it everywhere, and it's just going to click and make you realise that this is why you're not understanding Portuguese, spoken Portuguese until now. Trust me, it is going to get easier to determine what people are saying. So let's move on to my favourite then, filler words. Now, if you can master these, your Portuguese is going to sound so natural. These are singular words that can mean a lot or mean nothing at all, but we drop them into our conversations all the time. Usually we're just using them to fill the silence, which is why we call them filler words. So let's take a look at a few. Boa. This is a great one. I would translate this in English to be like, oh, nice one. It's a great one to use when somebody is telling a story and you're wanting to say, oh, nice, yeah, cool, boa. They also use ok a lot, which I mentioned in my Cheats on Portuguese with English video, where I gave you some English words that you can be really easy to drop into a conversation. But just remember to do this with a Portuguese accent, okay? So you can say, okay. Another super common filler word is pois. Again, it's very difficult to actually put a meaning to this, but it's kind of just a way of agreeing with somebody and being like, yeah, well, yeah. So you can say, pois, when somebody's saying something and you want to agree with it. Another one that I use all the time is então, or it can be shortened to então, or even just tão. This again is kind of like, well then. It allows us to change the subject, but it also can be used as a greeting when you want to say to somebody, hey man, então pá, tudo bem? I hear old men on the street greeting each other like this all the time. The next one, tipo. It's so common, and it translates what we would say for like. I was like, and she was like, and they were like, e ele disse tipo. It works in exactly the same way. I'm definitely guilty of using this too much. Another one that I say a lot is enfim. Now, this means at the end, but it's kind of like a way of saying anyway, don't worry about it. Yeah, anyway, let's change the subject. Enfim. I use this at the end of sentences all the time. Ou seja. This is one that took me such a long time to understand. I remember when I was a student and I would hear the professors say this all the time, and I was like, what does ou seja mean? The best translation that I have come up with is kind of like in other words. So you might hear people say things one way, ou seja. Say ou seja and then say it another way. So it literally means or it might be, okay? Because seja is the subjunctive of ser. So it's kind of like in other words. People say this a lot. E tal. That's another way of saying etc, etc. So when you don't want to list off the whole rest of other examples that you might be giving if you're listing something out, you can just say e tal and etc. That's a really, really good one to avoid having to say more words. I think it's kind of like in English when we would say and that. A sério? That's another really good reaction kind of filler word when somebody is telling a story and you're like, really? A great way to fill up silence. Pronto. Pronto is another one that is just so hard to translate. It literally means ready, but we will often use it to be like, okay then, or even, there you go, there you go. Pronto. The last one I'll give you is yeah. Now, of course, this is just kind of like yeah, but we can definitely use this in Portuguese conversation as well when we're agreeing with something, or even when we're thinking to ourselves, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So don't be afraid of using these more English type words and saying them with a Portuguese accent, because it really does work. Check out this video that I mentioned earlier for more on that. I also have an awesome 60-minute lesson for beginners that's totally free. Head to the description where you can get the link to register. I would love to see you there. Something else that makes you sound super Portuguese that I will leave here at the end is adding inho onto the end of words. You will hear this all the time. People will say things like tchauzinho, or they'll ask you if you want a cafezinho. I often refer to my puppy as my bebezinho, so not just a bebe, but making it even more affectionate and cute by adding the inho on the end. So this is known as the diminutive, and it's usually used to make whatever you're talking about smaller, but actually the Portuguese use this in way more context, and I did a video on this a long time ago, but it's still really helpful. You can check that out. I will list it in the description as well, how to use inho in Portuguese. If you can manage to do this and incorporate everything else that I told you in this video into your vocabulary, people are just seriously going to think that you're a native speaker. If you can master this way of speaking, you are going to sound so much more like a local, and it's going to go a long way to helping you understand real life Portuguese in the streets as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. It really helps my channel get seen by people just like you who want to learn practical Portuguese in plain English. Check out this video next, and I will be back next week with more tips and tutorials to build your confidence and conversation skills in Portuguese. Até a próxima, pessoal!